Paula, did we hear from Scott? Is he still traveling like he thought he would be? Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if we had an update. Oh, wait, there he is. Just say his name.
Like Beetlejuice.
Just only say it once. Yep. Oh, yeah, we got a couple minutes before the meeting, so. Yeah.
Driving through smoke.
Probably got the background on. I forget what you call it, fuzzy.
Hello, Mr. Tim.
Howdy.
Good evening. How are you doing, Kristen?
How are you? Are you just getting back?
Feels like it. It's been a week.
Okay, yeah, that's a tough transition.
You know, I could have spent another few weeks.
Always the best over there.
Leave it down there.
Ready? All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency Board to order for July 16th. Paula, will you please call the roll?
Stacy Coburn,
Here.
Walter Denstadt,
Here.
Scott Hagee,
He was online. Lose him? Yeah.
Kristen Lilbeck.
Here.
Artie Long,
Here.
Timothy McLaughlin.
Here.
Ken Richardson,
Here.
Marcus Swift,
Here.
Dan Bring is absent.
Thank you. Feel everyone who can, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'm here, Paula. Sorry, I couldn't get my microphone.
Thank you.
Welcome, Scott. Thanks for attending, even though I know you're driving and I'm sure you're exhausted after flying back across country.
Yeah.
The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. The next item is approval of the minutes, and I just wanted to comment that we did make corrections on two people's, the spelling of their names. So basically Scribner's errors, nothing that we need to worry about, but I just want to let you guys know that. Does anyone have any other corrections or additions to the minutes? And if not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
Councilor Long.
Yes.
Hi, it's Jonathan. I just wanted to know, were those changes reflected in the record at all? They were just, you mentioned that there were some changes made.
Yes,
I don't know what they
on,
are.
well, so they are Kirsten Lilivek. It was written as, sorry?
Ego.
Oh, bingo. I'm sorry.
Oh, I made her Kristen. But up here's
Okay.
there for who spoke.
I also cannot hear Paula.
Okay, Kristen Banco. No, I made Kirsten into Kristen, so I fixed her name, and I fixed Claire Graper's last name. I made her
I see.
Draper.
I see. Thank you so
There's-
much.
there's-
Yep. So, and those will be reflected in the minutes that I sign. Any other corrections or additions? If not, I'll take a motion to approve the minute, or yeah, the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
McLaughlin will second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hey,
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. At this time, I will take public comment. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any urban renewal subject. 5 minutes per person will be allowed. Claire? Graper. Oops.
My name is Claire Graper, and I'm an interested citizen and community member. I gave you all a packet. I know it's a big read. So I'm just going to highlight what I've put into it. It mostly came from, yes, from the community outreach done by yourselves, which was amazing. I applaud you, our representatives, in your continued efforts to involve the community in decisions that will have consequences long into our children's future. I know I am not the easiest to deal with, and every one of you has always treated me with politeness and respect, and sometimes that can be challenging. This says stuff that I don't mean it. It's just my voice. So I apologize if my Facebook publication after the last meeting was a miss. I left before you decided not to. Thank you very much for your correction. Appreciate that very much. I'm really looking forward to the results of the Google funding survey. The response that I received back on Facebook with the results when I did publish them was fantastic. Everybody was really excited to see that they weren't the only one paying. I think we all know that the historic nature of our downtown may be slipping away. I look forward to some real plans tonight. Make sure that we have a cohesive vision for our downtown. I'm not saying that I don't like tourists or that I don't want development, but I feel like an ad hoc, we're going to put a skating rink here and we're going to put a merry-go-round there and we're going to have a park over here behind the railroad tracks and next to the mosquitoes. I think maybe you might be slightly missing keeping it cohesive. Which, from a marketing perspective, having done it for 25 years is really important because if you don't have a solid message, you're never going to. So the word cloud really indicated to me that I felt like our community really needed a gathering space, whatever that might be, but a large area where we can get together. We used to have square dances in this town when I was growing up. Like we used to see people, it wasn't just like you do in Portland. Don't meet people's eyes. Don't want to make connections with people, which is very reminiscent. I've walked around downtown and I've been able to speak with a few of our shopkeepers. I'm not sure I've heard even one of them say that they didn't want to see people from our downtown. Them all say that they enjoy the tourism, but I've never heard one of them say. Sorry, I skipped this one. So in the building versus no building solutions, I really felt like that also emphasized that we're really looking for a place to gather and to be able to get together as a community. I feel like respondents were united in that. The survey was a really great first step in rebuilding our connection to our council and to our agencies. This COVID coma, it's not just you, it's not just me, it's everyone. So I look forward to hearing from you as to the future of Main Street and what, if any, impact the Google taxes will have on that future. I understand the Google tax money is not for this board. I understand that that's for the city council. And I do look forward to that, but I also want us to remember that this is a town, this is a city, it's a holistic thing. And it doesn't have to be just one. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Appreciate your feedback.
I'm Richard Wolf from the Dalles, Oregon. And my cell phone's on.
Okay, you're done.
That call would take way over my time, that's for sure. I have an opportunity to meet with Andrea Kloss and Jennifer Topeka. They're Port Authority. And tomorrow at 9 a.m. And I would like to invite any of you that would like to show up. We're going to have a look at what was, I believe, a seaport for the Dalles. Did all of you receive the email from Paula that it's worth reading. First Street is an opportunity. Right now it's a dead zone in our city. And something like the project that existed in 1938 created a bustling city. 20,000 attendees at Bonneville and 10,000 here in the Dalles. The whole promenade idea, the train stop, it was really there. And I really hope to bring that in as part of urban renewal awareness and create some shade down there. I had a chance to meet with Eric Gleason, Historic Landmarks. And he had give us an opportunity to go inside his building and see some old photos that represented somewhat of a wharf frontage that created shade. There's opportunities galore down there to do some things that we haven't considered. And we need to think out of the box for it. I believe I can help save some money to get the projects needed from Lewis and Clark Park all the way to the top of 4th Street, where there's an unpaved road. I've been a builder for a long time, project construction manager forever, and I see opportunities that most don't. So again, I would like to work with everybody. I try to be as nice as possible, and I'm kind of a hard-ass contractor, but I am not narcissistic. I'm open to all ideas. And from the beginning on this Tony's project, my heart has been with my hometown. I have all the brick. I sold the glue lamps. I wanted to keep them for batting cages and pickleball court. And there's still a lot of opportunities, and those are also, but it takes a lot of money. And I believe that, like Mom used to say, a dollar saved is a dollar earned, you know. I'm hoping to save a lot more than dollars. I'm hoping to save our buildings. Love buildings. Our town, seaport. I don't know how we managed to bury a seaport down here, but we did. And it's a pretty big deal back in the day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to make public comment? And there's no one else online, right, Paula? Okay, great. All right, well, now we'll move on to our action items. Number 7A, Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Plan Update, recommendation to council.
Thank you, Chair Long. Dan Spots, Economic Development Officer, City of the Dalles. On page 17 of your packet, you'll find the agenda staff report for this little brief discussion that we've been having over the past year or longer regarding revision of the urban renewal plan. As a reminder, we're looking at a plan that has not been revised since 2009. We've gone through a series of discussions, meetings over the past, probably 9-10 months now, with a few changes that have been made. And I wanted to highlight some of those rather than go through the staff report in any detail. In the staff report on several different pages here, I'd like to highlight those things. We're talking about basically a restructuring of the historic projects that we've had to basically put them in order of what has been accomplished, what has not been accomplished, sometimes abandoned, and what is in the process of being accomplished. The old 2009 had kind of a mishmash of things, some of which had been completed in 2009. So we wanted to update that. It's important to do that. As a best practice in urban renewal, it's important to note new projects that have been developed since the plan was established in 2009. So there are several of those, and those appear on page 39. And I'll get to that page myself so I don't forget anything. Basalt Commons being, of course, one of them. The Tony's site acquisition and site rehabilitation. We'll talk about that a little bit later this meeting. And First Street reconstruction. Those are the new projects noted. We're making changes to the incentive program, updating the incentive program, giving it a new title. That one is in here as well. So those are some basically structural changes to this. We have updated the mission, well, not the mission, sorry, but the goals and objectives, made some changes to that. And those appear on page 28 of the staff report. That item is really an important one because that triggers basically a city council requirement. And this is established by the urban renewal plan itself, which appears on, I'll get to that part of this. On page 45, way back to the end of the project, end of the packet, under item 1203, council approved amendments. This is a section that requires the council to weigh in when we actually change goals and objectives. So on toward the bottom of that page under 1203, you'll see council approved amendments include any change in any provision of this plan that would modify the goals and objectives or the basic procedural planning or engineering principles of the plan. So that is the one thing that triggers the fact that we'll be going to city council. We're not talking about a minor amendment or a substantial amendment. It's a council approved amendment. That wording is given by the plan itself. And we'll go over the motion in just a second, a proposed motion rather. We did have some feedback, and I appreciate Stacy in particular for your comment going from that. And this had to do with reference to parking. So on page 29 of the packet, going down about halfway, you'll see item F, to provide an adequate amount of properly located and designed off-street accessible parking in the downtown area. The original version of that went on to say, including a plan to program and to effectively pay for, manage, and maintain such parking. And that seemed to carry more over into the area of public works and city responsibility and things. So it was a kind of a late comment, but the whole idea of inviting comment from all of you was to give this revision one last chance.
Yeah.
And so I haven't heard anything else, went with that one. So what you see in the staff report is does not include what I referenced just now. It refers only to what you see here.
Okay.
To provide an adequate amount of properly located, designed off-street accessible parking in the downtown area. And in the projects that have been updated in the plan itself, you'll see that we've checked that box. We've done that. We've got that parking. So that's under a completed category. So with that, I'd like to see if there are any further questions. And then I would like to proceed to the proposed motion, which is on page 18 of the staff report. Questions, comments? I know it's been a long discussion. Yeah.
Yeah,
Marcus.
I just wanted to thank you for all your work on this. I think this started in my very first meeting back in October. And I know everyone here has had great feedback and it's been a great process and I appreciate all your work on it.
Appreciate everybody's support, Josh, and Paula, and all of you for bearing with us on this. It's interesting because you learn so much about the detail of how this has all come together and all the research and the whole history of it, all the amendments and everything else. It's been quite a story. I do have a slight modification to the proposed motion, and I was reviewing the language in the plan itself, and so I wanted to be sure that the motion accurately reflects the language in the plan, and I mentioned the council-approved amendment. That's the term that I think we should have in the motion for consistency with the plan. So the proposed motion would be accept the revised draft of the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Plan and adopt Resolution 24004, recommending approval of the proposed amendments by the Dalles City Council to take the form of a council-approved amendment. So that would be something that we would present to council. The resolution itself that I mentioned is also in your staff report. And that's toward the back of it. On page 47 of the staff report. Basically, it's just over a one-page resolution that gives a little bit of the history of this and recommendation that recommends the proposed Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Plan attached to and made part of this resolution as Exhibit A be approved and forwarded to the City Council for its review and adoption. That concludes my staff report.
Great, thank you. And also just wanted to highlight to a lot of people, I think probably we caught on, but just in case the public didn't realize, there was a lot of information that was sort of lost, or if you hadn't went and dug it up and found it and put it all in one place, I think that would have been to the detriment of the agency. So thank you for looking so hard when you came up against walls or holes. I really appreciate that.
Been a group effort. We've been doing archaeology in the basement of this building for quite some time.
Well, I appreciate that. And, you know, you take it for granted that your staff is going to do that, but at the same time, we shouldn't, because, you know, you made a choice to do that and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. Do I have a motion?
I'd be happy to make a motion if I can comment first.
Yes, of course.
All right. Thank you. I want to echo Chair Long's and Board Member Swift's comments of thanks for putting this together. I particularly appreciate it. I think that what Chair Long just said, the list of projects over the Urban Renewal Agency's history. It's useful reference for interested people in our community just to take a look at and reflect on both things completed, things started and partly completed, things that we let go. You don't take on a list of big ideas or big projects. Let me rephrase that. If everything a person or an agency takes on gets completed exactly as planned, they weren't big enough. They weren't thinking big enough. And obviously Urban Renewal has done a variety of projects of different scales, some successful, some let go. But I just appreciate that. And I appreciate the history presented here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. On that note, I might call attention to the map, the interactive map link that we sent. I was going to talk about staff report, but that's a great segue to that one. 72 projects. So they don't begin to fit in the plan. The level of detail is way too much, but 72.
Exciting.
You'll
So I
remind
should
me
do a
of-
press release.
Well, that's, I was just,
Jill did something.
I was just thinking that it should be updated and released to the press, and perhaps a feature article on that, just to keep the citizens aware of what and how the money was spent.
And us.
That would be highly recommended.
Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody else ready for a motion?
Yep.
Chair, I move that we accept the revised draft of the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Plan and adopt Resolution 24-004, recommending approval of the proposed amendments by the Dalles City Council to take the form of a council-approved amendment.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I didn't. He might not have been able to get his mute off.
Oh.
Okay.
I voted in favor.
Okay, thanks. Okay. On to action item 7B, endorsement of 2024 Transportation Growth Management Application.
Thank you, Chair Long. Still me. Now on page 54 of the packet, the Transportation Growth Management is a competitive grant that's released periodically by Oregon Department of Transportation in concert with Department of Land Use Conservation Development. The idea is to identify and balance ways of improving land use efficiencies in concert with transportation management. How do people get around? What do we talk about multimodal transportation, whether it's EVs, public transit, pedestrian, bicycle access, constraints in traffic access. We submitted a proposal back in 2019, awarded. That did not work out for various historical reasons I won't get into here, but we are being encouraged by program officers to resubmit something that is similar to what we submitted in 2019, but also recognizing developments, changes, initiatives taking place since then. For instance, the idea of a new high school was not mentioned in 2019, a new hospital location, county's acquisition of 159 acres west of Chenoweth Creek, childcare project, affordable housing on Chenoweth Road, things of that nature. All of those have a transportation element, certainly a land use element. On the land use side, I quickly get out of my depth, so I would like to defer for anything I'm missing on that point to the expert in land use, seated to my left, who also has familiarity with the original TGM. Josh, may I put you on the spot and just talk more about?
Yeah, I mean, overall, this is a project I think I worked on with two predecessors ago. We were awarded the grant and didn't take on the grant after receiving it. So now it's, been something I've really, I'm excited to be working with Dan on. It's a heavy lift going for a grant like that. And Dan and I made the decision around Christmas time that we're going to kind of push through and go for it. And we had a very competitive grant back then. And so we're able to reuse that and really just take a look at as Dan mentioned, the west side of the Dalles. There's a lot of need over there on various different levels, and I could see a lot of we listed these huge projects that could be happening in that area. So just making sure that we are prepared for this development and to occur in these coming years. So I think that's what I have. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, but I think this time around, although this isn't, portions of this are within the original scoped out district of the urban renewal agency. This is the reason we're trying to make this as competitive as possible. So we wanted to bring the agency in on it again. The agency supported this back in 2019. Dan has already received our team has received a lot of support from this from other agencies in the area. So I think this is kind of that final step of just trying to get one more to add to our list.
Perfect. Thank you, Josh. I don't think I did mention the West Side. Thank you for saying so. The project title, West Side Renaissance. That is the area. It is a small section of urban renewal district is within that area, that boundary. And then as Josh mentioned, back in 1990, it was very much a part of the entire district. And of course, that's a lot of the history that we've gone through. We went through city council. We have the required authorization from city council to submit the grant. We are asking for the endorsement of the Urban Renewal Board and your continued participation through the technical advisory committee that we'll have. There'll be various citizens involvement, public meetings, things of that nature, if we receive the grant. It is competitive. They will not be awarding more than one, we understand, for our region. And we do have a number of letters of support already received.
And I get the feeling if we're fortunate enough to get this, the city is going to be responsible for making sure they take care of all the administrative information and the cross the Ts and dot the Is rather than us. We're just endorsing it.
Correct, correct. With staff will be managing, and we'll
Yes.
be actually going out for a contractor to do some
But kind of
background work as
the
well.
body that's going to be responsible to whoever granted the money is going to be the city council, correct?
Yes, it would go through the
And
city.
It's not a matching grant.
There is a match requirement, but I think that staff time, for instance, can count toward that.
I see.
Yeah. And I appreciate the fire district for being one of the supporters. I have a
Really?
letter from Chief Palmer.
I didn't even know.
So basically, you're just asking for support for the letter of support. This is not going to in any way be an urban renewal project. We're just supporting.
No,
what's going
definitely
on.
not.
I think that was.
The motion
Yeah,
is on
just-
page 55 to endorse 2024 Transportation Growth Management Funding Request to Oregon Department of Transportation for the West Side Renaissance Master Plan.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Hearing none. Take a motion, and if you're looking for that wording, it is, I think it's on page 52, 55. Thank you.
Page.
We flipped those around just in case anybody's.
They did. I'm sorry about, I did.
Yeah, no,
Sorry about
no
that. Page
worries. I
52.
wasn't-
Page
yeah.
52.
I have on mine.
Thank you, Stacy.
I move to approve the motion to endorse the 2024 Transportation Growth Management Funding Request to the Oregon Department of Transportation for the West Side Renaissance Master Plan.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I didn't hear Scott. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none.
I'm sorry, I supported it. I'm just having a hard time getting my mute off.
Yep, no worries. I was about to suggest Paula just check in with you later and see if you said it when the mic was off or something. Okay, perfect. All right, so that motion passes. All right, so now we have action item 7C, which is B in the packet, Tony site redevelopment options.
Thank you very much. Very long. Going to page 49 of your packet. A lot of interest in this project that we've heard tonight, and appreciation again to all of the people, 248 as I recall, who responded to the survey. I'd like to go over a few points and a little bit of just a reminder in the staff report. This goes back, of course, to the agency's acquisition of the former Tony's Town and Country site, subsequent decisions to attempt to renovate the existing building, realization that was not feasible, proceeding to demolition this past fall, and then the question of what do we do with it now? So over the past 6 months, starting in January and going on through the June meeting, we've developed basically a discussion around request for proposal or request for expressions of interest. And at the June meeting, the direction we picked up pretty strongly was to go for a request for expressions of interest. Having said that, I think it's important to go back to the survey and just remind ourselves of some of the highlights of that, as was noted earlier in the meeting today, and I appreciate the audience for bringing that forward. Public gathering spaces. It's not just the category of public gathering spaces, but related categories that fall into that same thing. Greenway, parks, places for children, things of that nature. They all kind of go into that same spectrum. You put those together, there's well over 150, probably more of those 248 responses that speak to something like that. Residential development should not be discounted because that was also a pretty popular option in here. Commercial space, restaurant or market, again, there are a couple of different categories that could be kind of merged together like that: shopping, commercial market, things of that nature. Those were in there. There was a little bit of interest in parking in the staff report. We are suggesting that's not the highest and best use for the property. So we would recommend that not be at least solely dedicated to a parking lot. As I mentioned earlier, we've kind of covered that base elsewhere in the community. There were other responses. One of those in the form of a letter that's also attached to your packet, which is on page 53 of the packet. This is from the Bancos, of course, owners and operators of the Neon Sign Museum. There's been some discussion, I think some brief mention of this in previous meetings, but well, they came forward and talked about it, as I recall, in June. Jansen Beach Carousel. We have that, the Bancos Neon Sign Museum has that coming through Restore Oregon for the parking lot currently located adjacent to the Neon Sign Museum. In the letter, they are proposing putting that on the Tony's site instead. So I wanted to call attention to that. We are not recommending or not recommending. I just want to be sure that you are aware that that is in there and that's forward. And that is kind of a good example of other responses we've had. There's a lot of feedback on building versus no building in the survey, most of it trending toward no building. And I think as background to this, it's important to reflect upon proximity of Federal Street, that one block segment of Federal Street between First and Second. The idea being that we turn that into a public plaza. This has been a discussion separate from Tony's, but complementary to the Tony's site. And it could be that Federal Street Plaza alone could serve that purpose, or that some combination of Federal Street and some portion of Tony's would be an expanded site. If you put all of Tony's, and there are two parcels there, and Federal Street together, talking about half a city block or more. It's a big, big area. There's also a question of capital improvement. If we turn all of Tony's, and you can see where I'm at on this, and if we turn all of Tony's into an open space, how do we pay for it? How do we maintain it? So I hate to get down to the old issue of money, but right now we are constrained on everything else we're trying to do, including First Street Plaza, Federal Street Plaza.
And it takes it off the tax roll.
So, and that. Regardless, open space is in there. It's a big, big area of interest. What we would like to propose is a request for expressions of interest that would take into account public interest in open space, green space, in conjunction with Federal Street Plaza in some way, just reminding the fact that as we develop a request for expressions of interest is not to the level of an RFP. We're not asking for engineering. We're not asking for detailed renderings of a structure. We're asking for ideas. And the idea would be to talk about the potential value of the site, its proximity to something that could be complementary to it, that being the plaza, and the downtown itself, the history, the culture of downtown, of the community at large, and putting that out for ideas. We could do that. We could focus on the carousel. That's an idea. We could negotiate directly with the Bancos on the carousel. We could do that without an RFEI, or we can do an RFEI, or we can do a request for proposals, which would be, of course, much more involved, or something else entirely. But you see our recommendation here following up on the June meeting. Josh, anything to add?
Yeah, I think part of this conversation that we'd like to have, this discussion we'd like to have, is not only look at maybe what the agency would like to see with this site, but also what the agency doesn't want to see with this site. I think it's just as valuable listing what we do not want to see on this site. As Chair Long pointed out, there's also this idea of, building versus no building. You do have to look at the direct impact on taxes compared to the indirect impact on taxes. One having more substantial direct being a building, the other a public space has more of an indirect impact to taxes. It may attract uses, may attract businesses in the area, but that site itself would not be returning to the tax rolls. We have a line in here talking about, the agencies. Tonight, it's important, I think, that the agency remember what the mission statement is. The mission statement of the agency is to eliminate blight, and appreciating property values within the agency's jurisdiction, and in the process attract aesthetically pleasing, job-producing private investments that will stabilize or increase property values and protect the area's historic places and values. You could say that the demolition and the hazardous abatement took care of the eliminating blight, but there's the second half of that worth consideration, and that is this idea or this attraction, the statement in the attraction of job producing private investments. So there's a lot that we're throwing at you this evening, and I think we're hoping really for all of the members here to throw everything at the table here. We want to really hear from you on how staff can go through. I know we've had a couple exercises here where we've come in front of you. We would very much like to move forward with something, a next step on this. I don't want to have to come back and have a conversation about, well, what are we going to do with the Tony site? I want this to be that conversation. We want that to be this conversation. And we received a lot of great responses from our community members. And there's just, we want get some guidance on this, and there's ways to draft an RFP or an RFEI. But also, as Dan mentioned, there is a use that's been presented to us from the bancos on placing a carousel on this property. That could be something that the agency could take a look at. If the agency is interested in that, the agency could start having separate conversations rather than going through and issuing an RFEI at this time. We could also issue an RFEI and just request that the bancos submit through that process so we could take a look at everything else, really in a matter of fairness to everybody else involved. So there's like I said, a lot to add to this conversation. I think you could say that, if some portion of the site is developed into a public space, it would be meeting the goal and not the goal, but of what those responses that we've heard about this open space. We are hearing that people want a space downtown, a place to hang out. The city is very much committed to moving forward with this Federal Street Plaza and taking a look at the Federal Street Plaza, and it could make for a great space downtown. The other consideration is, would you add that entire Tony site to it? We want a use that isn't going to be taking away from some of the other uses that have been slowly, building up throughout these years. For instance, I know there's been conversations about an event space here, maybe a stage for, events that can be, nightly concerts. Well, we just have in the recreation building, we have a venue that just opened up 2 weeks ago. We also have a Lewis and Clark Park that is a great place to hold these events. So what kind of use can add to the fabric that we currently have and maybe not, take away competing interests? I think this goes in line with back in October, we had a conversation about going forward with what types of ideas do we want to put in an RFP. And at that time, we heard from a local developer we've invested a lot of money into a project on, and we've kind of steered away from going the housing route potentially on this site because we don't want to provide too much competition on that investment that the agency has already made. So, with that, we are more than happy to answer any question, guide the process, however we want to go about it. But we just really want to hear from the agency to give us the tools to move forward with a process to get something built.
And so, as leadership, Marcus and I have met quite a bit with you guys and talked about some different things. So before we weigh in, I want to hear what's on the mind of the rest of the board.
Happy to start.
Yeah, great.
So this is my first time here, so pardon my microphone usage here. So I was able to go to Walla Walla this last weekend and check out the Park Plaza that we had actually spoken with one of the ladies who prepared a report for us prior, had given us a few of the pictures of it. And it was a lovely space. I thought it was great. I saw people using it regularly, even in 110-degree heat, which I thought was really interesting considering we have that pretty frequently here too. It was inviting. It was beautiful at night. They had some string lights that were kind of seesawed around and really pretty, and a small fountain at the front that I saw kids reaching into from here and there. And What was also striking as someone who did used to own a business downtown was seeing how many local businesses were thriving around that space as well. And so I was really encouraged by that to see a bookstore, there was a Starbucks, there was also a local cafe that was doing well, and about 5 different restaurants that were abutting that space as well. So for me, when I look at that space in conjunction with Federal Street Plaza and that idea there, I would love to see space for retail or potentially something like the carousel in addition to public space. I do think that there is room for both in that area. And especially as you mentioned, there being 2 sites on Tony's site, essentially, I think there's room for maybe asking for RFEIs, is that what you said? Maybe with the idea of utilizing either half or the entirety of the space from different people to see if there are options for both. Also with the idea that those places would be open. I have no idea about this carousel other than what we heard last week. It's really exciting. I think it's very cool. I also want to make sure that's a functional space and that that carousel is working, that it's not something that's going to be an eyesore as well if it breaks down. I want there to be a plan for when that will be operational and perhaps like an agreement for what that looks like with our downtown space. That's
I have a question for staff. Josh and Dan, if you consider the Tony's 2 parcels and the Federal Street as one rectangle and cut them in half, is there room, in your opinion, for a commercial project or an enterprise of some kind that would meet some of the ideas we had talked about on half of it? I ask because Federal Street Plaza is something I've been in support of for a long time, and I'm that's great. I'm wondering if we can have both our cake. We can have our cake and eat it too. Can we have half plaza and half project?
I don't see it as neither or a proposition. I think there's a way to balance the two.
Well, I'd be inclined to encourage an RFEI that took that look, that essentially gave potential developers, whether local or not local, to come in and give them that area to work with. Like, here's this half that we want a project on. Dream big and bring us some ideas. Personally, I would say also have some financing hashed out, right? Or at least an idea of financing and not just pie in the sky, untethered to any like dollars, but have some idea of financing. And then the other half is kind of its own project. That's a plaza project, which is probably separate, probably to be done by the city or taken on.
Awesome.
We might even consider encouraging as a board, encouraging the city to take on the Federal Street Plaza and institute a committee or an effort of some kind.
Thank you.
Yep. So at this point, let's discuss as ideas rather than direction to staff too. Other people, comments, direction?
Well, I just was sitting here thinking to release this portion of land that's large enough for the carousel so they can put it there. The area that they had originally intended would some kind of land swap help facilitate the carousel going on the Tony site, or is the value next to the Elks Lodge really of no consequence?
Something
Or
if
something else.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
If we wanted to go in that direction,
Yeah.
there'd be a lot of things to negotiate.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear that. Can you? Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Right at the end of the phrase, you said there would be.
There would be a lot of things to negotiate.
Okay.
And, we wouldn't want to go into.
I just, I was here last time, and if I'm any good at reading the room, I believe that this group was enthusiastic about the carousel. There was one very inspiring speech delivered towards the end of the meeting. And I'm okay with that, even though, kind of my theme has been we're supposed to create stuff that has income with buildings that are on the tax rolls. I think that it would attract in people and there would be some businesses thrive near it. So, so I'm thinking that it would be a good thing. I think that we're going to have to, ownership would be the Neon Museum people, and it's going to have to be enclosed in order to keep it from getting damaged by the weather. And we're going to have to depend upon them, I would assume, to keep it in running order. If they let it go to pieces, the city would have to step in if they want to keep supporting all these businesses that pop up around it.
Okay, so I'm just gonna step in here for a minute. What I'm hoping is that we can't judge any project. They just happen to come before us. And what I'm really trying to get from the group is, are we doing a REFI, which is personally what I think we should be doing so that it's a little easy for a low level for people to get into. And then what do we definitely not want so that we can put that in there so people don't waste their time. And then if there's things that we do want in general, so that everybody has an equal opportunity to apply to the REFI and have their things considered on an equal basis, so that we're not advocating for one or the other, or no one mistakes the fact that because we know about one, we're advocating for it, if that makes sense. So I guess obviously I'm advocating for an RFEI just to get some information in. We know that Federal Street Plaza, the city wants to maintain control over it so that they keep it up and that it doesn't go into private hands and then not be maintained, because once we let go of property, we're not really going to have control other than our ordinances over it. So so does anyone have thoughts about what they definitely don't want in our REFI, or things that you want to encourage? Oh, Scott's got his hand up.
All right. Well, again, apologize I couldn't be there, and sorry for all the confusion here. I guess just generally, from my perspective, I think that the lot, I think the street next to it, I think, dedicate that towards, this plaza is great. We might remember too that the building next to the Tony's building is also basically vacant and for sale as well. So there's more property there from a development standpoint if somebody wants to do that. But personally, I think that I don't think we can just, unless the city or some other entity is willing to kind of take that on as a public space, or, a lot of the suggestions that were made, which were great suggestions. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly not going to be an urban renewal project that we're going to develop it into some, park or something like that. And then urban renewal is not going to continue to maintain it, going forward. So I think that if it's going to be some sort of publicly owned public space, there's going to have to be an entity willing to take that on. So while I like the idea, I think that the plaza next to it is going to be a good adjunct to this piece of property. But I do think that we need to get it back into private hands. I think, we need to see what kind of interest is out there. And I really think that whether it's an RFP or the other one, it doesn't matter. We can write the RFP in a way that doesn't make it onerous for them to respond to. But basically what we're doing was we're putting it out there saying, here's a piece of property. These are here's the physical constraints, and tell us your ideas. In terms of ideas, I don't know that I want to put a lot of constraints on it. I mean, obviously we're not going to put parking on it, but I would kind of leave it pretty open to wanting to get the ideas from the private sector as to how they think it could be developed and what it could be developed as. We can certainly, accept or not accept whatever comes in. So I think I'm in favor of putting it out there. I'm in favor of letting, the business community tell us what they think they can do with it. And then we can go from there. So thank you.
Oh, and I just wanted to also mention that we had talked with staff about the need to protect the ideas that come in, so that someone brings in an idea to us, it doesn't get scooped by somebody else in the community. So I just wanted to be clear to the board that we would be protecting that
How would you do that? I'm curious.
In the past, we have met in executive session when we're discussing the private things, and there's certain things you can discuss publicly. When we used to do DD, whatever. Thank you, D. Anyway, we used to keep that private because it was like people's numbers and some other concepts. So there's certain things that you can keep private, but still discuss publicly in a general concept of what you're doing.
I guess I don't, not to be dense, I don't quite follow how that would work. I personally want to hear ideas and put them in the public, not numbers, not proprietary information, obviously.
Correct.
But if somebody comes up with an idea and says, "I think we ought to do X," I don't have any money. And it's a good idea. They're going to get scooped by somebody with funding.
No, I'm talking about it when we review the
Like
the
an actual-
proposals that
sure.
we can look at that, and then we can still come forward and say what types of things, but what we're trying to do is protect people so that if they bring forward a concept and we decide not to accept them for downtown, somebody else doesn't take their idea and go put it on a different place in town or create something that competes with them.
If there is intellectual capital invested in a proposal or something, significant financial research, things of that nature, responses to what we put out can be kept in confidence. We can summarize, we can bring forward recommendations, but sometimes there's fairly proprietary information that can be included, and that's what we wish to protect. We don't want to discourage people from submitting things that might otherwise be submitted.
Not at all opposed to receiving some whatever style of proposals that, these people say I'm maybe interested in purchasing the land, all the land, some of the land, getting all that, and then evaluating and telling them we don't want it to be a parking lot. We'd like a restaurant. See what we get. That's all fine. And I don't have any problem with that. What I was hearing is let's decide what we're going to do with Tony's lot. Don't want to cover it again and again and again. And I'm okay with that. But the two things are two different things,
Stacy?
As much as my heart would love to see a big, beautiful open space with all sorts of great ideas of fountains, and I struggle and I hear what Josh and Dan have said about, just like we were concerned about encroaching on, other developers, potential residential places. We also don't want to encroach on other people's already operating businesses. So, and parks and things that are already available. So I hear that. And I think perhaps we can look at ways to include in the RFEI, the idea that the First Street Plaza will be there and available so that they can plan their proposal around the fact that they know that our intent is we would like it to be complementary to what's potentially going to be there. I short of anything, we wouldn't want to see, inappropriately in downtown. I can't hardly think of anything that wouldn't be, I wouldn't want to say we wouldn't want something because I'd like to hear all sorts of great ideas, and maybe somebody could think differently than I could. But I do like the idea of having potential opportunity to, if we can split that part, or explain that they can look at one side or the other, or something that might work with one piece or the other differently. I think that's a great opportunity if for someone. So other than parking lot, and we need to return some dollars to the tax rolls, and maybe we can find a way to make it all work together nicely with the First Street Plaza and make it cohesive.
Marcus?
Yeah, I agree with Kristen and Dan and Stacy. I think an RFEI is the right way to go, and Scott as well. So I like everything that I've heard. I didn't hear anything that raised any red flags for me, just as long as we're incorporating Federal Street Plaza into that design, and not, I think my only off the table would be parking. I don't think that needs to be another parking lot.
That leaves me. Well, I support moving forward to solicit proposal for development, whether that be a building or a non-building or a combination. I would prefer a combination. And the underlying mission would be to add value to the downtown in whatever we choose. But I would certainly like to look at proposals. And then we make a decision from that point, what fits, what would add to the downtown corridor and maximize and leverage all of the funding. So that's my recommendation, is move forward.
Thank you.
So to help Dan come up, we talked about this. It's hard to write RFEIs. So is there, oh, just a second, Scott, I see you. Is there anything that you want to, as a board, you want to say this would give extra weight or would make us feel extra positive toward this project?
Well, as of last week or last time we heard, that was a new proposal for the carousel, which that proposal came out of that, was surprising. But that's one example. Are there other things out there that is potential? And that's what we want to try to solicit, is people that would recommend certain developments on that property. I would also like, Walter made a mention, was maybe a land swap or a parking lot swap, so that lot then could be, instead of having a loss of property value, that could be turned back in to maybe soliciting a usage of that parking lot for a business development right there. I think that's a valuable area as well. So there's that potential. It's just something that we should look into. Developing the downtown, every usable space to enhance commercial and the beauty of the downtown corridor. So that's our motivating.
You're saying potentially anyone who has land to swap.
Well, it could be, but let's examine, let's see what's out there. And then we can make some decisions when we have more concrete proposals.
Okay, I'm going to call, oh, sorry.
No, it's great.
I'm going to call on Scott, and then I think Dan looks like he wants to say something. I'm not sure. So Scott.
Okay. I agree with, we don't want to see a parking lot on that property, but I honestly don't think we need to even mention that in whatever document we put out, because nobody is going to construct a privately developed for fee parking lot. It's not going to happen. So I don't think we need to really worry about that.
I agree with that.
Right.
Did I?
No? Okay. Other.
I'm happy.
One more thing.
I'm happy.
I think that it would be a good idea to just kind of put in there that it would be good to have options that face that Federal Street Plaza. That was something that was really cool about the Walla Walla Plaza, was they had, if they didn't have like a doorway on that actual side, they had a window that people could come and pick up from. And I think that would encourage use of that space, which would then help, generate the revenue to keep it up.
Oh, that's great feedback. Yeah, good.
They had a window for food pickup.
Yeah, they had a cafe, they had a little Greek restaurant, and even some of the places that fit with the plaza chose to develop their own little patios that sat right next to it.
Yeah.
And some of them had like complementary colored chairs. Some of them chose to go with the similar colors. So it was really nice. It's a really pretty place.
Photos?
I have 2 photos. Yes, I can share those with you. I'll shoot you an email.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm fine with all this. Do you guys feel comfortable with the direction that you received just now? Okay.
So, yeah, I just want to, Dan, did you have any other things that you needed answered from us? Because I know you've been looking at how to write that up, and I just want to make sure you got everything you need.
I think we've got enough direction, Josh.
Yeah. I think there's there's going to be some, language that we'll fine tune in here of, although we want this and, let me know if this isn't the direction of the board. Although we want this to be open, this RFEI idea to be open to, less barriers in an RFP. We do need to shape it in a way that we're not creating just another survey. So there
Correct.
there is going to be an entry level to get into this RFEI. We've received a lot of great comments from our community members, but don't want scratch on a piece of paper submitted to us for then us needing to weed through it to let you know.
So just for my own understanding, you will be creating like an application. This is not just sort of like, as you say, random Facebook comments or pieces of paper thrown through.
Correct.
This is like an application, maybe an application fee, like, okay, serious ideas, $100 or whatever, and actually ask people to pony up and get serious about their expressions.
Yeah.
Semi-serious.
Yeah, we threw around the potential for an application fee. And that's something we could consider, but I do think above all, there needs to be some level. Definitely won't be a Facebook post. We're going to put it out. It would be formal, similar to putting out an RFP. We'll advertise it the same way. But yeah, we want the step up. We want, more than, some real thought going into these. And, I don't think would be too far-fetched to ask for some type of rendering, some type of plan. We need to visualize it. At least I am. I don't know about everybody else in the room, but I always, whenever I'm taking a look at a proposal, I want to see what a concept, kind of like we have with the Federal Street Plaza. We know the Federal Street Plaza is going to be different than the plan that's been shared with all of us, but we want to see something for how to incorporate everything into that site.
We need to know their qualifications to bring it to fruition.
Correct. Yep.
And then another thing that we had talked about that I didn't bring up tonight is that they have to apply for the RFEI in order to be considered like in the future for any future steps.
Yep.
So, Scott.
Yeah. This is very different than a survey. I mean, we need to make it clear we're looking for developers, people that want to develop something on that property, not something that has we're not looking for people who have ideas, that just, hey, this is a great idea, somebody should do this. I mean, I think what we're looking for is companies, firms, or individuals that want to develop something on that property. And I think we need to ask them, in whatever form we go out with, we need to ask them how they intend to do this, and do they have the financial resources to undertake a project that they're, suggesting. We don't need to get into a lot of details at this point, but we want them to have to respond to that.
Correct. Thank you for saying that. And Stacy also said timeline, which is correct.
But this will be very much a structured process. We're very familiar with grant applications, with other RFPs, RFEIs. You can very much lend direction to what you want in published it. We're looking for specific information that would be used to develop a visual, a concept. Start with the concept, but tell us how you intend to do that. What are your qualifications fiscally and capacity-wise, everything else? There's a lot of detail we can build into this thing, short of requiring full-blown A&E, architectural and engineering and all of that.
Yeah. So that is something we could say, is that the board is going to put heavier weight on fully developed concepts that come with information about how they're going to achieve it, because we are moving forward.
Right.
So
Probably linked, frankly, to 2 points for each of these. This responses were 20 points, and this one's for 30, and so on.
You have everything that you need now? I don't envy you for having to write this, by the way. I've written grants and I've responded to grants, and good luck.
Well, you should see the EPA brownfield grant that we're waiting on. This will be a piece of cake.
All right, so I think Marcus is willing to make the motion.
Yeah, Chair Long, I would move to direct staff to prepare a request for expressions of interest for the Tony site for review and approval at an upcoming board meeting.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Richardson seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you all.
Scott, you said yes, right? We didn't hear anything, or we're not sure we heard something. Okay, we'll just check with him offline to confirm. Okay. So the next item is item 8, board member comments and questions. Anyone? Oh. All right, number 9, staff comments and project updates.
Anything from you? I've got a few.
Yeah, just a brief, to keep everybody in the loop. We had on our initial agenda when we were drafting this up to have a conversation on First Street. The First Street conversations are still, we're still having some detailed conversations on First Street internally. I want to make sure, you know, we're not, this kind of goes to the Tonys, this the Tonys conversation again. I want to make sure we're coming to you with some hard facts on moving forward, some hard options moving forward. We really need to incorporate the Public Works Director and the City Manager on the next steps with the First Street project. So before we come back with that, hopefully it's soon, but I don't want to just rush into another conversation and throw a lot. We've been throwing a lot at this team for the past couple months. So we appreciate all your, you know, everybody's input on this. I know we've had some very heavy meetings, a lot to take in. So maybe it gave you a break on the First Street conversation this time, but it'll be at a meeting soon to come.
We'll make up for it then.
We'll be sending you a bill.
I have one question for staff, if I may. This will be brief. I know we're waiting to find out what's going on with First Street and how much of our funding, of our limited funding, we'll be putting towards that and for what. That said, what's our current status with our renamed incentive program? Is it live? Are we pausing that until we get First Street figured out? What is
Kind
that?
of nice segue to my my own staff report.
Very good.
We are not accepting new proposals right now. We have had to put those on pause, and there's a lot of interest out there. There are a couple of larger proposals, in particular one with a Main Street grant that has a certain timeline associated with it. We have to watch that one very carefully. To my staff report, there were a couple that we committed to before we put the program on pause. And so out of respect for those projects, we did keep those on track. We didn't think it was right to say, yeah, we approve your project and oops, we're going to pull the rug out from under you. They are smaller projects. One is the Legion Hall. This is HVAC, electrical, and plumbing, putting that into office space. We are proceeding with that one, that agreement. And then also the Granada Theater. Again, this was another commitment before we ran into all of the issues we've been talking about. This is replacement of the reader board at the Granada Theater with an electronic reader board. This has gone through HLC review. The artistic elements of that, the vintage elements of the reader board will not change. All of that stays in place. It's just the lettering inside of that framing that would go over to an electronic version. You've got this old plastic lettering that is falling apart. And so we're proceeding with that one. Also, there's a security issue. The doors are held together by a chain right now, and that's not very good. So upgrading the doors on the Granada Theater. Those are the two that we're proceeding with. And neither is a major investment. We're not talking development funding agreement or anything like that.
Well, I know we have a pretty significant decision coming down the line at some point here with First Street, what we do and how much we fund of that. But I do hope that we can keep our incentive program going for a while. I feel like that's been valuable to a lot of our downtown businesses.
That would be our hope as well, if we can find a path, and we're working on that.
So in the past, we've had some rules around like whether a project gets started without us. So are there any projects that might have a need to get started before we can commit or unfreeze our funds? Do we need to make some changes to our process or have some flexibility?
The ones that would be in that category are a sufficient magnitude that we would hesitate to try to push them forward right now. There are two.
No, I'm not talking about pushing them forward. I'm actually talking about, can we still help them later if they need to get started without us right now?
Yes, the answer is yes on that one, as long as we don't delay too long. If we push this into 2025, then I think there's going to be there are going to be some challenges there. We have a few months to figure it out.
So are you asking, Chair, whether if somebody gets started on a project, they will not disqualify themselves from coming and asking for assistance later?
That would be a good case in point of one of the ones I'm talking about right now. We've been communicating with them. They have the ability to proceed on part of the project without our committing funds.
And they do qualify to come and ask.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, that's what I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Scott.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. So what becomes problematic is if people go spend money and then they come to us to try to replace that money. I don't think we want to do that.
No.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
We're not doing that. That's very clear.
Yeah,
We don't.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah, we do not fund projects that have not been approved. You don't come to us after the fact and ask for money. No.
But yeah, that's correct. But we're also just trying to make sure that nobody, if people have to get going on some other aspect, that they're not cutting themselves out. Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
That's it for my staff.
That's the rest of your staff report. Okay, that was easy. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
I
yes,
forget the map, the interactive map.
yes.
Are there any other changes to that? Then it's going live. Okay,
Live.
we'll run the process.
Yeah. Right. Yay, interactive map. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I was just talking to Dan.
Oh, okay. I'm like, see you. Yep, I see you.